True Camping Horror Stories. The first story, The Haunting Shadows of Whispering Pines. The wind whispered through the ancient pines as I stood at the edge of the campsite, my breath visible in the chill of the night. My friends and I had decided to embark on a camping trip deep in the heart of Whispering Pines National Forest. It was supposed to be a weekend filled with laughter, s'mores, and shared stories around the campfire. Little did we know, the shadows lurking in those woods had their own tales to tell. As night fell, the forest came alive with eerie sounds. The crackling of twigs beneath unseen footsteps and the distant hooting of an owl set my nerves on edge. Ignoring my unease, we gathered around the campfire, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the trees that surrounded us. "Hey, did you guys hear that?" Sarah, one of my friends, asked, her eyes wide with fear. That I listened intently, and through the symphony of nocturnal noises, I heard a faint, mournful whisper carried by the wind. "Help, leave." My heart skipped a beat, but I brushed it off as a trick of my imagination. "It's probably just the wind," I said, trying to convince myself as much as my friends, but the wind couldn't explain the cold, unseen fingers that seemed to trace patterns on the back of my neck. I shivered, wrapping my arms around myself, hoping to ward off the sudden chill that had settled in my bones. As the night wore on, we retired to our tents. I zipped myself tightly inside, trying to shut out the ominous sounds that echoed through the forest. I closed my eyes, hoping to drift off to sleep, but sleep eluded me. In the dead of night, I heard footsteps outside my tent. They were slow, deliberate, and accompanied by a faint, anguished whisper. "Leave this place, before it's too late." Fear clenched at my chest like a vice. I wanted to call out to my friends, but my voice caught in my throat. I mustered the courage to unzip the tent slightly and peered outside. Moonlight filtered through the trees, revealing a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the campsite. Its features were indistinct, but its eyes glowed with a malevolent light. I gasped and zipped the tent shut, my hands trembling. The figure couldn't be real, it had to be a trick of the darkness, a manifestation of my fear. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. The following morning, I hesitantly shared my experience with my friends. They exchanged worried glances, their expressions mirroring my own fear. Despite our apprehension, we decided to explore the forest in the daylight, hoping to dispel the lingering sense of dread that hung in the air. As we ventured deeper into the woods, we stumbled upon an abandoned cabin, its timbers weathered and worn by time. A sense of foreboding washed over me, but curiosity got the better of us, and we cautiously entered the decaying structure. Inside, we discovered a collection of old, dusty photographs scattered across the floor. The pictures depicted families, couples, and groups of friends, people who had once found solace in these woods. But there was something off about the images. In each one, the faces were twisted in expressions of terror, their eyes wide with fear. As I picked up one of the photographs, a cold gust of wind swept through the cabin, extinguishing the lantern we had brought with us. Darkness enveloped us, and I heard faint whispers echoing around the cabin walls. "Why did you come here? You should have stayed away." Panic seized me as the disembodied voices grew louder, filling the air with their mournful pleas. I fumbled for a flashlight, illuminating the room and revealing the words etched into the cabin walls, written in what looked like blood. "Heed the warning of the Whispering Pines, or face the wrath of the lost souls." Terror-stricken, we fled from the cabin, our footsteps pounding against the forest floor. The once familiar surroundings now seemed alien and menacing. The shadows of the trees seemed to writhe and contort, reaching out for us with spectral fingers. Back at the campsite, we huddled together, our minds racing with fear and confusion. The forest, once a place of natural beauty and tranquility, had transformed into a nightmarish realm where the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred. As night fell again, the haunting whispers grew louder, filling the air with their desperate cries. We tried to leave, to escape the clutches of the malevolent force that held us captive, but an invisible barrier surrounded the campsite, trapping us within the grasp of the Whispering Pines. In the darkness, the ghostly figure I had seen the previous night appeared once more, its eyes gleaming with otherworldly malice. "You ignored the warning," it hissed, its voice echoing with centuries of sorrow. Now you are bound to this place, just like us." The forest seemed to come alive with a sinister energy, the trees contorting and groaning as if in agony. Desperation clawed at my throat as I realized the truth: we were not alone in the whispering pines. The lost souls, trapped between worlds, sought company in the living, their anguished pleas echoing through the night. Driven by fear and desperation, we tried to communicate with the spirits, hoping to find a way to appease them and break the curse that bound us to the forest. Guided by an otherworldly force, we performed a ritual, chanting ancient incantations in the hopes of reaching out to the restless souls. For a moment, the forest fell silent, the whispers fading into the distance. We dared to hope that our efforts had succeeded, that the spirits had found peace and released us from their grip, but our relief was short-lived. A deafening roar shattered the silence, and the ground beneath us trembled. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp and twist as a monstrous, shadowy figure emerged from the depths of the forest. Its eyes glowed with an unholy light, and its presence exuded pure malevolence. "You have awakened the guardian of the whispering pines," the ghostly figure intoned, its voice a cacophony of wailing souls. "You have trespassed into our domain, and now you shall pay the price." The guardian lunged towards us, its form shifting and changing with each step. We screamed, scrambling to evade its grasp, but it was futile. With a swift motion, it enveloped us in darkness, our screams fading into the night. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself alone in the forest, the remnants of our campsite scattered around me. The whispering pines stood silent and still, as if the events of the previous nights had never occurred. Was it a nightmare? A hallucination brought on by fear and exhaustion? I couldn't be certain. But the sense of dread that lingered in the air told me otherwise. To this day, I carry the haunting memories of that camping trip with me, a constant reminder of the unseen forces that dwell in the shadows of the whispering pines. I warn others to heed the legends, to stay away from that cursed forest, lest they too become lost souls, trapped in a realm where the boundary between the living and the dead is no more. And as I recount my story, I hear the faintest echo of whispers on the wind, a chilling reminder that the spirits of the whispering pines are always watching, always waiting, for the next unsuspecting soul to wander into their domain. The second story, The Unseen Terror of Blackwood Forest. The first time I heard about Blackwood Forest, it was in hushed tones and fearful whispers. Locals spoke of it as if it were a cursed land, a place where nature had taken a sinister turn. Despite the warnings, my adventurous spirit got the best of me, and I convinced my friends to join me on a camping trip there. Little did we know, the forest held horrors beyond our wildest imaginations. The sun hung low in the sky as our car rumbled down the winding road that led to Blackwood Forest. Tall trees loomed on either side, their branches forming a natural canopy that blocked out most of the daylight. I felt a chill crawl up my spine as we ventured deeper into the forest, the shadows growing thicker with every mile. That we finally reached our campsite, a small clearing surrounded by ancient trees. Despite the ominous atmosphere, we set up our tents and started a campfire, trying to shake off the unease that settled upon us. As night fell, the forest came alive with sounds, rustling leaves, distant hoots of owls, and something else, something we couldn't quite identify. The first night passed without incident. We laughed and joked around the campfire, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. The second night, however, was different. That it started with Emily, one of my friends, waking me up in a panic. She claimed she had heard whispers coming from the woods. I dismissed it as a nightmare, but her fear was palpable. As we searched for her flashlight, we noticed that one of our friends, Mark, was missing. Panic set in. We called out for Mark, but there was no response. We ventured into the woods with our flashlights, shouting his name, but the forest swallowed our voices. It felt as if the very trees were closing in around us, suffocating us with their oppressive presence. Hours passed, but there was no sign of Mark. We returned to the campsite, our faces etched with worry. Emily was inconsolable, blaming herself for waking me up and leading us into the woods. We decided to wait until morning before searching again, hoping that the light of day would reveal any clues about Mark's disappearance. Morning came, but Mark was still nowhere to be found. We decided to split up and search the surrounding area, hoping that someone might have seen him. As I walked deeper into the forest, I heard something, a soft, eerie whisper that seemed to come from all directions. "Leave, before it's too late." The voice was barely audible, carried by the wind like a distant echo. I froze in my tracks, my heart pounding in my chest. I called out to my friends, but they didn't respond. It was as if the forest had swallowed them whole, leaving me alone with the haunting whispers. Driven by fear and desperation, I followed the voice, hoping it would lead me to my missing friends. The whispers grew louder, the words becoming clearer with every step I took. "Beware, the forest is alive with unseen eyes." I stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin, its windows shattered and door hanging off its hinges. The whispers seemed to emanate from within, urging me to enter. Against my better judgment, I pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside. The interior was shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by the pale light filtering through the broken windows. Dust motes danced in the air as I explored the cabin, my footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. In the corner of the main room, I found an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. As I read the entries, a sense of dread washed over me. The journal belonged to a hermit who had lived in the forest many years ago. He wrote about the ancient spirits that dwelled within the trees, vengeful entities that punished trespassers with unspeakable horrors. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I ventured back into the forest, determined to find my friends and escape the clutches of Blackwood Forest. The whispers grew louder, guiding me through the dense undergrowth. I followed their eerie chorus until I stumbled upon a hidden grove, its ancient trees forming a circle around a weathered stone altar. There, I found my friends, bound and gagged, their eyes wide with terror. Surrounding them were hooded figures, their faces obscured by shadows. I recognized the leader of the group, the hermit from the journal, somehow preserved through the passage of time. That he spoke in a language I couldn't understand, his words resonating with power. The forest seemed to come alive, its trees twisting and contorting as if responding to his command. I watched in horror as the hermit raised his arms, invoking the wrath of the ancient spirits. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath us, and tendrils of darkness snaked their way up from the earth, ensnaring the hooded figures. The forest roared with rage, its unseen eyes blazing with fury. The hermit screamed as he was consumed by the darkness, his cries echoing through the grove. With a deafening crack, the altar shattered, releasing a blinding light that engulfed the entire grove. When my vision cleared, the hooded figures were gone, and the forest was silent once more. My friends were freed, their bindings vanished without a trace. That we wasted no time leaving Blackwood Forest behind, our footsteps quickened by fear. As we emerged from the oppressive trees, we glanced back one final time, half expecting to see the forest come alive with vengeful spirits, but there was nothing. Only the quiet serenity of the surrounding landscape. That we never spoke of our ordeal to anyone, fearing that we wouldn't be believed. The memory of Blackwood Forest haunted our dreams, a constant reminder of the unseen terrors that lurked within the natural world. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that the forest is still watching, its ancient eyes following my every move. I warn others to stay away from Blackwood Forest, to heed the whispers that carry on the wind. For in the heart of nature, there are forces beyond our understanding, waiting to punish those who dare to tread where they do not belong.